You know, having a Wikipedia page, it's kind of become this modern-day seal of approval, right? It tells the world you're important, it shoots you to the top of Google, and it just gives you this digital credibility. But what most people have no idea about is just how incredibly fragile that status really is.
Take a look at this number, 1,000. That's roughly how many articles get deleted from Wikipedia every single day. Poof, just gone. Wiped out by an army of volunteer editors and bots. It's a staggering number, and it shines a big, bright light on a very harsh reality.
So that really is the million-dollar question we're tackling here. It's not just about, hey, how do I get a page? It's about how you make it stick. How do you survive? Well, this is your survival guide.
If you want to last on Wikipedia, you have to understand one single concept that rules over everything else. It is the secret password, the key to the kingdom, and that word is notability. This one idea is the difference between a permanent, stable article and getting deleted in a heartbeat.
Okay, here's the official definition right from Wikipedia, and you got to pay really close attention to the wording here. The magic phrases are significant coverage, reliable sources, and not controlled by the subject. See, this isn't about being famous or successful. It's about whether other credible people have bothered to write about you in a serious way.
So let's break that down into 3 simple pillars. First, significant coverage. That means the source is actually about your subject, not just a quick name drop. Second, reliable sources. Think big-name newspapers, respected magazines, academic journals, places with fact-checkers. And third, the one that trips everyone up, independent. This means it can't be content you created, paid for, or control in any way.
And that leads us to the absolute #1 most common mistake people make. One that can honestly get your subject blacklisted. They get all excited, they write up this beautiful article, they hit submit, and then it gets deleted almost instantly for lacking notability. And here's the real kicker. Once an article is deleted for that reason, it becomes 10 times harder to get it approved later. Trust me, the editors will be watching for it to pop up again.
So, since your entire case for notability is built on the quality of your sources, the most important skill you can have is knowing a good source from a bad one. This is pretty much the first thing any editor is going to look at.
This right here is the fundamental difference you have to understand. Earned media versus owned media. Earned media is when a journalist from, say, the Washington Post decides you're newsworthy and writes about you. Owned media is what you write about yourself on your own website or blog. Wikipedia's entire system of credibility is built on the stuff in that left column. The stuff on the right, to them it's basically just advertising.
And this quote really sums it up perfectly. Look, anyone can write a press release. You can pay a service a few $100 and blast one out. It's self-promotion. But getting a feature story in a major publication, that has to be earned. That's the currency that has value in the Wikipedia universe.
And to be crystal clear, editors have a pretty long list of sources they will almost always reject on site. We're talking about your tabloid papers, fan wikis, and any kind of user-generated content like Reddit or Quora. They're also really skeptical of contributor articles on sites like Forbes versus articles by staff writers. And yes, you're seeing that right. The Onion is on the list. You'd be absolutely amazed at what people try to use as a legitimate source.
Okay, so you get the rules now. You understand the theory. So how do you actually play the game and win? Well, this isn't really about writing an article. It's about having a strategy. This is the playbook for building a case so strong an editor simply can't ignore it.
And this is probably the biggest mental shift you need to make. Getting a Wikipedia page is not a writing project. It is the final trophy you get after running a successful, long-term public relations campaign. The real work has almost nothing to do with Wikipedia itself.
So here's how the professionals do it. They basically reverse engineer success. First, they find stable, successful pages on similar subjects and analyze them. What kind of sources are they built on? Then they do an audit of their own coverage and find the gaps. The next step is just pure PR work, pitching journalists to try and earn that kind of high-quality coverage. And only then, after they've built up this solid portfolio of independent sources, do they even think about drafting an article. Now, things get a little more complicated, because not all subjects are treated equally. The general notability rule is just the baseline. For certain topics, the rules get way, way stricter. For example, articles about living people, or BLPs as they're called, are held to the absolute highest standard, and for good reason. Editors are incredibly careful here. The sources have to be rock solid, especially for anything controversial, and privacy is a huge deal. The guiding principle for editors is literally do no harm.
And it's not just people. Companies in general face a really steep uphill battle, mainly because editors are trained to have a sixth sense for spotting promotional content disguised as an encyclopedia article.
This chart gives you a pretty good idea of what I mean. Writing about a historical figure who died 200 years ago? Usually pretty low scrutiny. But an article about a modern company? Okay, the editors are going to be more skeptical. And then you get to industries like crypto or online gambling? Whoa. Those articles get put under a microscope because they're just drowning in hype and self-promotion.
Which brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial piece of the puzzle. You have to remember that Wikipedia isn't some flawless algorithm. It's a community. It is run by thousands of human volunteer editors. They are the gatekeepers. And they bring their own biases and perspectives to the table.
And one rule they take very seriously is the conflict of interest policy. Writing an article about yourself, your company, or your client is a huge no-no. It's just nearly impossible to write from the neutral point of view that Wikipedia requires when you're that close to the subject.
There's this quote that gets passed around among veteran editors, and it is just brutally honest and true. They say self-written articles seem to have a certain odor to them that professional Wikipedia editors can easily sense. They can just smell it a mile away. It reads like a brochure, not an encyclopedia, and trying to sneak one past them is a game you're probably going to lose.
Now look, the system isn't perfect. These are volunteers, they're human, they make judgment calls, and sometimes those calls can seem unfair or inconsistent. But they also have very long memories. The editor who deletes your article today will almost certainly have it on their personal watch list, waiting to see if you try to repost it tomorrow.
Okay, so we've gone through notability, good and bad sources, the right strategy, and the human element. So after all of that, what's the one thing you absolutely need to take away from all this?
Let's just boil it down to 4 crucial points. 1. A Wikipedia page is a result of being notable. It does not create notability. 2. Your real work is outside of Wikipedia, building that public record through earned media. 3. Approach this like a lawyer. Your job is to build a case with so much undeniable third-party evidence that an editor has to say yes. And 4, I'll say it again, never, ever write your own article.